Growing up, one of the games I used to play the most as a kid was Minecraft. But one thing I never quite managed to do was unlock the Platinum Trophy. So with all my internet wisdom, I thought why not now, as a 23-year-old man with no social life, try to do exactly that. As of today's date, that being the 18th of March 2025, there are 51 main trophies that you can collect, 50 if you exclude the Platinum. So without further ado, let's get into the video. We first open our map and scavenge some useful supplies from the bonus chest. Initially, I was hesitant to enable this chest, but I eventually decided it wouldn't be too much of an advantage and allowed myself to use it. I do want to make it clear, however, that we will not be using cheats whatsoever in order to get this platinum, which now that I think about it, I don't even need to clarify because using cheats literally disables trophies anyway. We open our inventory for the first time, earning us our first trophy, Taking Inventory, which means our platinum journey has officially started. Soon after that, we earn another trophy, this one being Getting Wood, for punching a tree with our fist and gathering an oak block. I then saw an opportunity to quickly gather some more trophies by making a crafting table, and then using said crafting table to make a pickaxe, hoe, and a sword, earning us 4 more trophies, benchmarking, time to mine, time to farm, and time to strike. Those last 3 are like a holy trinity for nerds. Anyway, with it being the first day, I didn't want nightfall to approach and not be prepared, so I started gathering resources to build a house, hunting for food, and killing sheep for wool. You know, the usual deal. During this, I earned another trophy, this one being Cow Tipper for harvesting leather from a cow. Since we now had some resources at our disposal, it was time to build a house. Now, normally I'm quite particular about my builds in Minecraft, and I do like to put a lot of effort into them, but since this video is focused purely on earning the Platinum Trophy, spending hours on a detailed house just wasn't viable for me, and seemed like a waste of time, so I instead built this absolute masterpiece you're seeing before your very eyes. I was conscious that one of the trophies requires us to kill the Ender Dragon, so it felt like the most logical course of action was to build towards earning that trophy as quickly as possible, which meant we needed resources. But not just any resources we can only find while mining. Before we took our first mining trip, however, I wanted to feel like I was well equipped to stay down there for a good while, which meant we were going to need better tools, more food, and coals for torches. I essentially just explored the surrounding areas of our home, trying to gather as much food as possible, as well as mining coal where I could. During our conquest, I spotted a village and thought this would be the perfect way to scavenge supplies. I started off by stealing as many of their crops as possible, but don't worry, I did plant them back. You know, my thieving does have its limits. I also found a brewing stand, which I took as well. Next, I found a good little spot of coal just on the outside of the village, but as I was attempting to mine it, a zombie started attacking one of the villagers, and I kinda just froze. And then once I remembered that I have free will, I attacked and killed the zombie, earning us the Monster Hunter trophy for destroying an enemy mob. After this, I headed back home, and using our recently acquired supplies, I made our first furnace and started cooking some of the food we collected earlier, earning us the Hot Topic trophy. Not long after this, I started making some stone tools, and upon making a stone pickaxe, we earned the Getting an Upgrade trophy for constructing a better pickaxe. Now that we were equipped with better tools and a newfound confidence, it was time to start mining. I spent a good 5 or 10 minutes or so looking for a good cave entrance, and eventually I found this one that looked pretty promising. We started off by finding quite a lot of iron, which is obviously going to be very useful going forward, but then for a while after this, the findings started to decline a little bit. Instead, I found myself at the center of a near-death experience, which I can tell you is not good for the heart. Despite our current luck, I decided to keep going, and eventually we found our first set of diamonds. However, we didn't yet have the tools capable of mining this ore, so it was time for another upgrade. I started to smelt some of the iron we found earlier, and doing so earned us the Acquire Hardware trophy, and we then crafted our first iron pickaxe, allowing us to mine the aforementioned diamonds, which then earned us another trophy, this one being diamonds. I then just continued on exploring the mine, and I found various minerals such as gold, redstone, and iron, which we were going to need a lot of later on. I also found myself having to fight a lot of enemy mobs as well, which is always fun. However, perhaps even more fun was the sheer amount of diamonds I was able to find while down here. I mean, it was a lot. I also forgot to mention that earlier I crafted some iron pieces using the ore we found just to make it a little easier, navigating the rest of the caves and the mobs that come with it. I continued to explore these caves for around half an hour, killing mobs and collecting every ore in sight. I was lucky enough to find some more diamonds too, which was a nice bonus. And also, through our continued exploration, we unlocked the trophy Adventuring Time for discovering 17 of 40 biomes. I mean, I'm not going to complain because it's a trophy, but I genuinely don't even feel like I've discovered 5 biomes, let alone 17. But hey ho, it's another trophy and we're one step closer to the platinum. Once I felt satisfied with everything we collected so far, it was time to craft our first diamond tool, that being a diamond pickaxe. Now that we had a newly crafted diamond pick, we could finally start to obtain obsidian, which we are going to need in order to make an enchantment table and access the Nether later on. However, before we could mine obsidian, we needed to make it first. I crafted a bucket and filled it with water not long before finding a pool of lava to dump it in, and after collecting a ton of obsidian, I decided now would be a good time to head back up to the surface and carry out some inventory management. As you can see, we collected quite a lot of resources while mining, most notably a crap ton of iron and diamond. The next day, I decided to use the obsidian we obtained a few moments ago to build a nether portal as well as an enchantment table, earning us 2 more trophies, the first one being Into the Nether and the second Enchanter. I then thought it would be a good idea to start checking off some of the more miscellaneous trophies within the game that don't really require that much effort. First, we turned some of our wheat into bread, which earned us the baked bread trophy. And then using the remaining wheat I had left in my inventory, I thought it would be a good idea to breed these 2 cows I found surrounding the area of our house, earning us yet another trophy, this one titled Repopulation. Moving on, I thought our next course of action should be making a cake, and I had pretty much everything needed except an egg. And holy shit, after grinding this platinum trophy, I genuinely have a hatred for chickens that I don't think will ever go away. I knew the best way to obtain an egg was going to be from the source itself, but fuck me, was it difficult. I found this chicken you are seeing on screen, and I kid you not, I followed this thing around for 10 minutes waiting for it to drop an egg from its anus, and eventually I just got so frustrated with it, I ended up slaying it, which is all well and good in the moment, but obviously I was still without an egg. I then thought it would be a good idea to head back to the village we raided earlier on in the video in the hopes that maybe I missed a chest or something that contains an egg. But unfortunately, this wasn't the case, and I instead found myself having to stalk another chicken. And I kid you not, I followed this thing around for like 15 minutes, and just as I was losing hope, it dropped an egg, and we now had all the ingredients needed to bake ourselves a cake. I headed home, and we immediately got to work, making ourselves a delicious cake, which earned us another trophy, this one being Fly. Next, we crafted a fishing rod and went fishing for the first time in this playthrough. And after successfully catching our first fish, we cooked it using a furnace to earn us the delicious fish trophy. I also crafted a dispenser which earned us the dispense with this trophy, which was a nice and easy one to check off the list, bringing us to 20 total trophies so far. Moving on, the next trophy I wanted us to tackle was the Leader of the Pack trophy, which is earned by befriending 5 wolves, so I packed our inventory with bones, and we set off to find our 4-legged friends. Just a side note as well, while I was looking for wolves, I stumbled across this emerald out in the open, which was pretty exciting. I've never really seen that before, and I also discovered what happened to be an abandoned village with zombified residents, and I made sure to make a mental note of this location as it's going to prove useful for a trophy we earn later on. I also may or may not have, borrowed some bookshelves and other various items from the village as well, but hey, I'll be repaying them later, so it's absolutely fine. I was eventually able to find and tame 5 wolves, earning the aforementioned trophy Leader of the Pack, bringing me one step closer to that platinum trophy. Next, I felt like it was the appropriate time to start building an enchantment area, so I headed into the wild to collect the resources needed for bookshelves. After collecting more wood, leather, and sugarcane, I headed back home and crafted a bunch of bookshelves, earning the trophy Librarian. I then also built a max level enchantment table because this will be useful later on. At this point, I was just a little under halfway in terms of reaching the platinum trophy, so I essentially just spent the next 15 to 20 minutes cleaning up some more of the miscellaneous ones. I first cooked and ate a pork chop, earning us the trophy Pork Chop. Very creative, I know. And next, I crafted and placed both a sign and a flower pot, which earned us 2 separate trophies, those being Pot Planter and It's a Sign. As well, through the process of completing the pot planter trophy, I also unlocked the trophy more tools for constructing one type of every tool. This came after I crafted my first shovel with the intention of using it to gather clay for the flower pot. I then crafted some shears and used them to obtain wool from a sheep, earning us the Have a Shearful Day trophy. Following this, I then wanted to unlock the Iron Belly trophy, which is acquired by eating rotten flesh to stop yourself from starving to death. But obviously to do this, we were going to need to deplete our hunger, so I just ran around for a good 5 or so minutes and attacked mobs until my hunger was entirely depleted, and then I consumed a piece of rotten flesh, causing the Iron Belly trophy to finally pop. Our trophy count was now sitting at 28 out of 51, and I had no intentions of slowing down. The next trophy on my agenda was Iron Man, which requires you to wear a full suit of iron armor. I'm not going to lie, I was a little bit worried that my game was bugged or something like that, because I crafted a fresh new set of iron armor, and upon equipping it, the trophy just didn't pop. So I then took to Reddit and various other forums where someone suggested that you might also have to build a shield in order for the trophy to register. So I began to load up Minecraft once again, and as our save was booting up, the trophy just popped, so I guess it was delayed or glitched or something like that. Now, the next trophy I wanted to go for was the Rainbow Collection one, which requires you to gather all 16 colors of wool in the game. And no, before you ask, I don't enjoy torturing myself. I picked this trophy next because before starting this challenge, this was the one trophy I was, dreading the most, simply because of how time consuming it can be. Obviously, some colors like black and white are very easy to obtain because you can just find a sheep with the corresponding color you need and then use your shears on them. However, there are some colors that can only be obtained by using specific dyes that you need to make using specific items. For example, to make brown dye, you need to use cocoa beans, and at the moment we have none of those. I did just want to say as well, I am aware that you don't actually need brown dye to get brown wool, as you can just find a brown sheep and obtain it that way, but I wanted to use and find cocoa beans to do it because one of the other trophies we will eventually need to unlock is Lion Hunter, which you earn by taming an ocelot, and these can only be found in jungle biomes, which is where cocoa beans are also located. So it just made sense to me to combine the two, and that's exactly what we did. After exploring for around about 45 minutes, I eventually came across a jungle biome and took a good amount of cocoa beans, not long before finding an ocelot and using some of our previously collected fish to tame it, unlocking the Lion Hunter trophy I mentioned earlier. Now remember, our main goal at the moment is collecting every color of wool, and one of the harder to obtain colors is green wool, simply because you need green dye, and to make green dye, you need cacti. And if you've ever tried finding cacti in Minecraft, you'll know it's a pain in the ass. So I set off on what turned out to be a very long, exhausting hunt for a desert biome, and after over an hour of running around and searching, I still couldn't find one. There was still some hope, however, as I came across a village in the Ice Plains where there was also an igloo, and for whatever reason, as long as an igloo has an underground section, there is always a singular plant pot with a cactus in there. So I headed down and claimed the cactus for myself. I also explored the village itself for a little bit too, and was able to grab some useful items like a diamond and a saddle. With the cocoa beans and cacti now being ours, I finally headed home, but I did encounter a little problem that I completely overlooked earlier. The problem? We needed to make green dye and cyan dye, but we only had one cactus, so I couldn't afford to use it right now. Instead, I decided to put a pin in this trophy for the time being, and I planted the cacti just near my house and planned to let it grow. And then while the cacti was growing, I thought I would tackle some other miscellaneous trophies instead. Since we just acquired a saddle not too long ago, it felt like the only appropriate trophy to go for next was When Pigs Fly, where you have to ride a pig and cause it to take fall damage. To make this a little easier for myself, I crafted a carrot on a stick and headed out to find the ultimate pig. Once we had found one, I built a really terrible dirt block staircase thing and rode the pig to the very top, and upon dropping off, it took fall damage, unlocking us the trophy. Next, I wanted to make my first trip into the Nether, since there were a couple of Nether-related trophies we hadn't yet unlocked. I didn't want to go in with my valuable items due to my crippling fear of loss, so I left most of our items at home and just brought items, I wasn't going to leave sleepover if I was to hypothetically die or anything like that. So I jumped into the portal, and it couldn't have been any worse. First of all, what the fuck is the Nether in 2025? Maybe I'm just arse at the game, but from the second I stepped into here, I was so overwhelmed with everything going on. There are so many different mobs swarming you all at once that it's almost impossible to actually navigate the Nether itself. And that's excluding the fact that the layout these days is so complicated and most of the areas are spaced between giant pools of lava. I just can't. I tried to make the most of the cards we'd been dealt, but I found myself genuinely lost within about 5 minutes. I mean, I even made a trail of torches and I still got lost. So maybe it is just a skill issue and I need to get good. But whatever, hashtag not my Nether. To top it all off, I was knocked off of a ledge and we fell to our death, losing all of our items and enchantment levels, meaning it was Nether 1, me 0. However, I wasn't going to give up that easily, and besides, there were still 2 trophies waiting for us in the Nether. Before going back in, I wanted to revise my strategy, and I felt like it would be a good idea to craft a compass so we could create a locator map, which should help resolve the issue of getting lost in the Nether. I made some new weapons, armor, and packed our inventory with supplies such as food. Without hesitation, I headed back into the Nether, and although not perfect, it went a lot better than last time. I was fortunate quite early on to come directly face to face with a ghast, so I thought it would be the perfect time to try and deflect a fireball back at them, and after successfully managing to do that, we added the Return to Sender trophy to our collection. I then proceeded to farm some XP by just gathering quartz just to get our level back up a little bit. And then one more trophy we needed from the Nether was the Into Fire trophy, which is granted by essentially killing a blaze, and these guys are only located in a Nether castle, meaning it was time for some more exploring. I'm going to be completely honest and transparent with you guys. Trying to navigate and look for anything in this place, let alone a castle while having tons of random ass mobs coming for you every second, was so overwhelming that I had to turn off mobs and switch the game to peaceful while I explored this place. It's not even like it's difficult in a fun way. Instead, it just feels so unbalanced and unfair, and I have no idea who approved this update. It's terrible. Anyway, after searching around for a good 10 minutes or so, I managed to locate a Nether castle, and so I headed in with the intention of leaving with some blaze rods, nether warts, and whatever other loot we might find. I decided to carry out my little raiding session while still in peaceful mode because I don't hate myself, and I managed to find 2 chests with some diamonds in them, and I also gathered some warts too. The last thing we needed in here were blaze rods, so after gathering the strength to switch back from peaceful, we fought our first blaze, and defeating him earned us the Into Fire trophy I mentioned a few moments ago. This meant we now had every Nether related trophy and we could haul ass out of there. But I didn't want to leave without first killing a few more blazes, as we're going to need more blaze rods to make potions later on. So after gathering a handful of blaze rods, I decided to call it a day in the Nether, and I headed on home to deposit our new items into storage. At this point, we were now on 33 out of 51 trophies, and we were about to add 2 more to that list. The 2 in question are Local Brewery, granted for brewing a potion, and Zombie Doctor, earned through curing a zombie villager, so I'm sure you can see why I bundled these 2 trophies together. To cure a villager, you need to splash them with a potion of weakness and then feed them a golden apple. The items needed to make this potion are water bottles, a fermented spider eye, and blaze powder with the addition of gunpowder to turn it into a splash potion. Despite having some of these items already, I wasn't in possession of any bottles or gunpowder, so I quickly set out to gather a bunch of sand that I turned into bottles of water. I then made a fermented spider eye along with some blaze powder too, but like I said, the last item we needed to begin brewing this potion was gunpowder, which was actually really surprising. I was quite shocked at the fact that I didn't have any up until this point, but whatever. After killing some creepers and gathering ourselves some gunpowder, we brewed our first potions of this playthrough, earning us the Local Brewery trophy. Now that we had the potions necessary for curing a villager, it was time to actually find one. I equipped the golden apple we had been storing for a while and set off towards the infected village I made a note of earlier on in the video. However, as I was actually making my way to this location, it seemed like the villagers themselves had the same idea, as I bumped into them while wandering through the forest, and so I took the opportunity here instead to cure one, earning us the Zombie Doctor trophy. The next trophy I wanted to go for was on a rail, which requires you to travel 500 meters in a single direction using a minecart. Using what iron we still had, I crafted a cart as well as some rails, but we were going to need a lot more. To be specific, it is recommended that you have at least 8 full stacks of rails. That's like 200 iron ingots, 20 gold ingots, 40 sticks, and 34 redstone. So yeah, a lot of resources. Using the iron I already had, I made a cart and some rails, but I was obviously going to need a lot more. This meant we were going to need to go mining. So without hesitation, I headed into the mines and just started gathering as much iron as I could find. And along the way, I even found quite a lot of diamonds too, which was a nice bonus. Anyway, after gathering enough iron, we started to head back home. And on my way, I came across this little island that contained a couple of emeralds. And I even found 2 cacti, which you can see in my inventory as well. So after reaching the house, I started to smelt the iron we found, not long before turning it into an assortment of both rails and powered rails. I also crafted some redstone torches and a lever as well, which we were going to need to actually activate the track once it's complete. Which, speaking of, I began laying the groundwork for our track, and after a lot of rails being placed, it was finally complete and ready to be tested. It turns out though, I actually overestimated how many rails we were going to need, as the trophy popped before the track had even ended, but hey ho, it was another trophy in the bag. Before moving on to the next trophy, I was conscious that I was running out of space for storage within our house, so I decided to make a relatively low effort yet effective extension to the side, allowing me to add a couple of more chests. With that done, the next trophy I turned my attention to was Rainbow Collection, and if you've been paying attention to this video closely, you'll know that we actually already started progressing towards this trophy earlier on in the playthrough, but had to stop due to us not having enough cacti to make both a green and cyan dye. Well, since it had been a few in-game days since I planted our cacti, it had actually grown to its fullest, meaning we could now harvest enough cacti to make both dyes I mentioned a few moments ago. I then proceeded to make both cyan and lime dye and added it to our increasing collection of coloured dyes. However, I didn't want to just collect all of the dyes and then use them on random sheep. No. That wouldn't be fun. Instead, I wanted to make a sheep pen containing every colour of sheep, just because I think it's more enjoyable and I'm weird like that. So I made a bunch of fences and then started to carve out the area where I wanted the pen itself to be. So after carving out the area, I then began to construct our sheep pen, and I needed to make it relatively big just because, you know, it's going to need to house at least 16 sheep. I ended up running out of fences as well as oak logs before I could finish the pen, so I went out to collect some more wood not long before turning that into fences to fill out the remaining gaps of the pen. At this point, we had a functional area to house the sheep, we just didn't actually have any. I then went on a conquest to lure as many sheep as I possibly could find into the pen, and after a long but totally worth it while, we had 16 sheep and counting, all ready to die. But not like die, I mean like die. You get what I mean. I then headed back to the house to prep myself with the dyes we had collected thus far, but we were still missing brown, black, green, and red dye. Also, another side note, I totally had a brain fart and didn't realize up until this point that lime wool and green wool are 2 separate colors. So yeah, shame on me. Using red flour and some cocoa beans, I made red and brown dye and then combined some green dye with white wool to make green wool. Lastly, we needed black wool, and so I hunted some squids for ink sacs, which I then combined with white wool to give us black wool. Finally, we had all the dyes and wool necessary to unlock the trophy we had been working so hard for, and so I added all of them to our inventory, built some shears, and headed towards the sheep pen. I then dyed all of the sheep each with a different colour, and then proceeded to shear them while collecting their wool, earning us the Rainbow Collection trophy, which meant we were now on 37 trophies. The next trophy I wanted to tackle was the Haggler, where you have to acquire 30 emeralds by either trading or mining. Now at this stage we already had 7 of them, so we were nearly a third of the way there to start off with, but luckily I found a wandering trader who was offering 3 emeralds in exchange for a fermented spider eye. So I quickly got to making one and traded it in, bringing our emerald count to 10. I also noticed that the trader was accepting blocks of hay for emeralds too, so I headed over to the village not too far from our house and gathered a good chunk of them, which I was able to use to get another 2 emeralds to our count. I then headed back to the village to see what sort of trades the villagers themselves were offering, and one of them was wanting beetroots in order to give up their emeralds. Coincidentally, there just so happened to be a beetroot farm right next to him, so I pretty much just stole his own crops and then sold them to him for some more emeralds, which meant we now had a count of 13. Next, I went out into the wild to collect some brown mushrooms so that we could make another fermented spider's eye and trade this in for some more emeralds, which is exactly what I did, and we were now more than halfway to earning this trophy. Following this, I went back to the village and there was another wandering trader who also wanted blocks of hay, so I was able to haggle a further 2 emeralds from him using the hay I collected earlier. We were getting ever closer to having 30 emeralds, but it wasn't time to celebrate yet. I noticed another one of the farmers was exchanging one singular emerald for 26 potatoes, and this sparked a genius idea from yours truly. I remembered that not too far from our spawn was an abandoned village with a butt ton of potatoes that I never harvested, so I immediately headed there and took everything. And when I say I took everything, I mean everything. I left that place with 5 stacks of potatoes, and then upon returning to the other village, I used them to cheese my way to 30 emeralds, and the trophy finally popped, which was a pretty good feeling. Since we were heading into the latter stages of this platinum run, I changed my approach towards the remaining trophies and just went for whatever trophies I felt like doing at that time, as opposed to, having a laid out structure like earlier on in the video, which brings us on to the next trophy, Staying Frosty. This trophy requires you to swim in lava while a fire resistance effect is active, but obviously to achieve this we needed to make a potion of fire resistance, which consists of nether wart, magma cream and blaze powder. After making the aforementioned potion, I headed to this conveniently placed lava pool just north of our house, drank the potion and went for a swim, which prompted the trophy to pop. Moving on, the next trophy I went for was Chestful of Cobblestone, which I would argue with anybody is one of the dumbest trophies to ever trophy. This trophy requires you to mine 1728 cobblestone and place it in a chest. Yes, you heard that right. You have to mine 27 full stacks of cobblestone and place it in a chest. Jesus, give me strength. With this in mind, I cleared my entire inventory and just started mining away. And around 20 minutes later, I finally had 27 stacks of cobblestone and we were ready to head home to place it in a chest. To be honest with you, the trophy doesn't actually take that long. It's just so boring. Anyway, we headed home, and after depositing all of the cobblestone into a chest, the trophy popped and we were now on 40 trophies. To get over the absolute snooze fest that last trophy was, I thought I'd go for a trophy that's a little bit more entertaining, and that is Overkill. This trophy requires you to deal 9 hearts of damage in a single hit, and there's a few things you need to do in order to achieve this. Firstly, we were going to need to enchant one of our diamond swords with either sharpness 3 or 4, which I was able to do here since I was now level 30. Secondly, we needed a potion of strength, which I made just moments before enchanting our weapon. And lastly, we needed to have the higher ground. It is suggested that you drop down onto your victim of choice as you hit them, because the momentum and speed from the fall also increases your damage. So using one of our many sheep, I did exactly that and we unlocked the trophy, easy peasy. Next, I wanted to make an iron golem in order to acquire the bodyguard trophy. Now, to make an iron golem, you need 4 iron blocks and a carved pumpkin. I checked all of our chests, and much to my surprise again, we had no iron and no pumpkins. But thankfully, there was a large group of pumpkins not far from where we were, so I gathered a bunch of those and then headed into the mines to collect some iron. After collecting enough iron, we were then able to smelt it and create some iron blocks. I then headed towards the village and used said blocks to construct an iron golem, and upon doing so, we were granted the trophy. Now, before I get onto the next trophy, I just wanted to preface this segment by saying that this trophy took me so damn long to obtain, and what makes it even worse is looking back, I could have got it so much sooner than I had done if I had just done a quick YouTube search, but whatever, it's done now. The trophy I'm talking about is Music to My Ears, which requires you to play a CD in a jukebox, which it sounds easy, doesn't it? And in theory it is, but obtaining a CD can be an absolute nightmare if you are not lucky enough to find one in a chest or, something like that. However, there is one way, a guaranteed way, which will give you a CD 100% of the time, and that is to have a skeleton kill a creeper, which will then lead to the creeper dropping a random CD. And me being the Minecraft demon that I am, I thought it would be super easy to do this and I'd have a CD in no time. But I was wrong, okay? For 3 nights straight, I tried to get a skeleton to kill a creeper and I just kept failing and failing. After the 3rd night of trying, I gave up on this method and thought it would probably be easier to just try and find a CD in like an abandoned mineshaft or something like that. So I genuinely spent upwards of like 4 hours roaming around, trying to find a point of interest that might have a CD. I found an abandoned mineshaft, I found a trial chamber, which I didn't even know what that was. I found a broken nether portal, and while they all contained interesting loot, none of them had a goddamn CD. So, feeling frustrated, I took to YouTube and searched for the easiest way to get a CD, and I came across this excellent video that I will leave a link to in the description of this video of a really easy to build CD farm. I proceeded to build the farm, and upon completion I lured both a creeper and a skeleton into my trap, and once they were both in position I was able to comfortably get the skeleton to kill the creeper, which led to a CD filtering through a hopper and into the chest. I collected the CD and then headed home to make a jukebox, not long before placing the CD in the jukebox to finally earn the music to my ears trophy. The next 3 trophies I went for were Renewable Energy, Sniper Duel, and Archer, and I was able to earn all of these trophies relatively back to back as well, which was a nice change of pace. To unlock the Renewable Energy trophy, you essentially need to smelt oak logs using charcoal to make more charcoal, so it's pretty easy. I then went outside to collect some logs, and then I proceeded to smelt those logs using coal, and once I collected the produced charcoal, the trophy popped, bringing our total trophies to 44 out of 51. Moving on, once nightfall was upon us, I began to build a small trap to lure a skeleton into, as I was now going for the Archer trophy, which for those of you who are not aware, requires you to shoot and kill a skeleton from more than 50 meters away. After I was finished building the trap, I was able to lure the skeleton into it, and to prevent him from despawning, I used a name tag on him, and I then built a 50 block long pathway stemming from the location of the skeleton, and then used my enchanted bow on him from 50 meters away to not only kill him, but earn us the Sniper Duel trophy as well. Soon after this, I headed into a nearby mine so that I could find and kill a creeper, using my bow, and then upon doing so we unlocked yet another trophy, this one being Archer. At this point we had 4 trophies left: beat the Ender Dragon, enter the end, throw diamonds at another player, and play for 100 in-game days. Because of this, my goal now is to acquire enough of the items necessary to actually activate the end portal once it's found, those being blaze powder and ender pearls, which allow you to make Eye of Enders. I immediately headed into the Nether and returned to the infamous Nether castle I spent so long searching for earlier on in the video. I stayed here for around 20 minutes just fighting mob after mob, and upon reaching 28 blaze rods I returned back home to deposit these into storage. Next, we needed to gather what is recommended 30 ender pearls, and the easiest way to grind these is by killing endermen in a warped forest. So I immediately jumped right back into the Nether, and after a good 10 minutes or so of exploration, I stumbled across a warped forest you are seeing on your screen right now. I then stayed here for a little while just farming ender pearls, and I've got to admit, there's nothing more satisfying than the sound an enderman makes when it dies. After gathering 2 full stacks of ender pearls, I felt we had enough of them for the rest of this journey, and I decided to head home. But I'm not going to lie to you, I got lost once again and spent around 20 minutes trying to find my way out to no avail. However, I did stumble across another Nether castle, so I gathered what loot I could find in there before attempting to find the way out again. Eventually, I came across this broken Nether portal and figured it would probably be easier to fix it and head back to the overworld that way. Of course, doing that meant we spawned in the middle of nowhere, so I had to spend another 25 minutes navigating my way back to the house, but eventually we made it, and the end was in sight. Literally. Since we now had everything necessary to activate the end portal, all we needed to do now was find the actual portal and then kill the Ender Dragon. Easy peasy. However, to speed things up a little, I thought it would be a good idea to prepare our boss loadout now, so that once we find the portal, we can just go straight in there and fight the Ender Dragon. So I did what any good gamer would do and googled the best loadout for facing the Ender Dragon and started to take notes. It is recommended that you have a full set of enchanted diamond armor, a diamond sword with a sharpness enchantment, a diamond pickaxe, an iron shovel, a shield, a bow with a power enchantment and obviously arrows, a few golden apples, healing potions, dirt, strength potions, slow falling potions, a carved pumpkin, and finally snowballs. I got to work on building this loadout, and fortunately we already had some of the items anyway, such as the enchanted diamond sword. I built a full set of diamond armor, and following that made a fresh new diamond pickaxe. Next, we made the shovel and equipped our enchanted bow. We then shared a pumpkin to grant ourselves a carved pumpkin, which we will obviously need to wear in order to avoid being attacked by endermen. Following this, I started to gather a load of dirt blocks, which will obviously be useful when it comes to scaling the towers in the end as well. At this point, we had made pretty good progress towards our end loadout, but we still needed a few more items for it to be perfect. I wanted to make a few golden apples, but I had 0 gold to my name. So I used 3 of my XP levels to give this iron pickaxe an efficiency enchantment, and I headed into the Nether to farm a butt ton of golden nuggets. Once I had a sufficient amount of those bad boys, I returned home and made some golden ingots, which I then combined with some apples to make golden apples. Next, I wanted to start work on gathering the potions necessary to help defeat the Ender Dragon, so I filled up 15 empty bottles with water and we got to work. The first set of potions I made were potions of strength, which is the result of combining nether wart and blaze powder together. I then started to brew potions of healing, and while they were brewing, I took the time to make some Eye of Enders. With the healing potions finished and the Eye of Enders in our inventory, I diverted my attention towards our armor and I attempted to enchant the full set of diamond armor I crafted a few moments ago. However, I no longer had enough experience levels to get a level 30 enchantment on my boots, so I very quickly headed into the Nether to farm some more quartz, as they grant a lot of XP, relatively quickly. Once I was level 30 again, I returned to the overworld and enchanted our boots with projectile projection 4 and unbreaking 3, so in terms of defenses we were looking pretty set. I then made another 14 Eye of Enders, bringing our count to 30. I know you only actually need 20 to activate the end portal, but I wanted to make sure we had more than enough so that we could actually find the portal itself. Next, I headed out to obtain some snowballs because for some reason they seem to one-shot the towers you have to take down while fighting the Ender Dragon. And then lastly, we needed a few phantom membranes in order to make some potions of slow falling. I spent a few nights hunting and looting phantoms, and upon collecting several membranes, I made a bunch of slow falling potions, and with that we had a loadout ready to tackle Jean. For those wondering who Jean is, that is the name of the Ender Dragon. I mean, I don't know about you, I had no idea the dragon was a lady, let alone called Jean, because that is a rough name. Anyway, with our sights set on the end, literally, I launched one of the Eye of Enders into the sky and started to follow its trail. After a lot of throwing and trailing, I eventually found the spot in which the end portal was laying under, and after a few minutes of confusing navigation, I had found it. This was it. I placed all 12 Eyes of Enders, put on my big boy pants, and jumped into the portal, which earned us the trophy, The End. And I'm not going to lie to you, once I got in here, I became so overwhelmed with pressure that my strategy went out of the window completely, and I sort of just freestyled my entire way through this encounter. After running from several Endermen, destroying towers, and swinging my sword like a maniac, we defeated the Ender Dragon, which granted us a butt ton of XP, and upon jumping back into the portal and skipping the endgame credits, we were transported back into our house, which popped another trophy, this one being the End. We were now just 2 trophies away from unlocking that glorious platinum trophy, and I was so excited. The 2 trophies we had left were Passing the Time and Diamonds to You. The Passing the Time trophy isn't necessarily a trophy you have to earn or work towards. Instead, it is granted after playing on your world for 100 in-game days. Now, one in-game day in Minecraft is about 20 minutes in real time. So if you do the math, that means to pass 100 days in Minecraft, you have to play for roughly around 2,000 minutes, which is just under 33.5 hours. Since we had been playing for quite a while at this point, my overall recorded playtime on the PlayStation menu was 32 hours, so I knew I was pretty close to unlocking this trophy anyway. So what did I do? Well, I just loaded up our world and I stayed AFK while I did real things in the real world, like studying. Anyway, after about an hour of just standing still, the trophy pops and we were now just 1 trophy away from the platinum. The last trophy, Diamonds to You, requires you to throw a diamond at another player. Now, let's time for some transparency. Me being me and me being the basement dweller that I am, I don't have a lot of friends. Me and trying to make friends is like not trying to convince everyone he's not a Nazi. It just doesn't work. So my lovely girlfriend volunteered to join my world, and after throwing a diamond at her, we unlocked not only the Diamonds to You trophy, but the Platinum trophy as well, which means we now have unlocked every main trophy available in Minecraft, and I have to admit, saying that is a pretty satisfying feeling. If you made it through to the end of this video, thank you for watching. It's really been so fun carrying out this challenge, and I hope you guys had just as much fun watching this video as I did making it. So obviously, if you did enjoy the video, why not give it a like and subscribe? It's free. Plus, if you don't, I'll karate chop your grandma, so it's best for everyone that you just like the video. Thanks for watching, and stay safe.